Okay, I'm going to do my best to put my finger on a very big problem that I see a lot of Christian women facing, which is basically summed up. It's that we have been taught to play small. We have been taught to be okay with things that are just not okay. And it's not even that we're like off track where it's like, okay, either we're following God's way or the world's way. It's that it's like we're either following God's biblical way or Christian culture way. And when I'm talking about Christian culture, I'm talking about people who are wholehearted, totally in for Jesus, and yet something is not right, but we don't know how to identify it. We don't know how to call it out. We don't know how to have issues with things or to say, you know what, I think that even though the group is doing this thing, I think God is leading me to do that thing. We don't know how to say, I'm struggling to forgive this person and it's really hard and it's taking longer than a day, but I know I'm supposed to like just forgive and forget and don't let the sun go down on my anger and all that stuff. And we've put all of these parameters, and there's a very clear verse in the Bible that I'm going to point to, but we've put these parameters around us in order to try to help us follow God's ways. And all that it ends up doing is it crushes our spirit and it keeps us playing small. It keeps us off track from God, but the whole time we're trying to convince ourselves that we're on track. The whole time we're trying to convince others. It's like, this is what God wants from us, and this is what we're supposed to be doing. And yet, at the end of the day, we're burying our talent in the sand, which is a parable that Jesus talked about, but we're burying our talent in the sand and trying, but the whole time we're not doing it from wrong motive. We're doing it from good motive, but we're taking the wrong action. We're focusing on the wrong thing. So I'm going to share a story, my own personal story that made this come to the surface for me. I'm going to share a story from Deuteronomy that really highlights this and where we've gone wrong. Because fundamentally, as Christians, if we are stuck feeling just frustrated or off track, but we don't quite know what's going on, and it's like, well, we're kind of like, we're going with a group, we're playing the game the way we're supposed to be playing it, but something is not right. My desire for you is that if you've been playing the game, it's enough to play the church game. And I'm not in any way saying that what the things that different churches do, or things that Christians do, I'm not against that. But I do want to just speak encourage into pushing back against the things that we're doing that are off track from God, because there are many things that we do with a good heart, but it's still wrong. So, okay, so I'm going to share my own story, a story in the Bible, and then I want to wrap it up with Jesus's parable. So recently, I realized that my whole life, I've been the craft person. Like, that's who I am. I've just, without going into detail, I'm the craft person in the family. And so recently, like in the last 2 weeks, I came to the conclusion that I don't think I'm a craft person. And it was really weird, but also really freeing. But I've just, for the last several years, have felt this pressure of I need to do crafts. And because it's sort of like if I'm doing crafts, then I know I'm resting enough. I know I'm relaxing. I know life is moving at a good pace. But I've stopped gravitating towards doing crafts. And yet I always feel this pressure that I need to be doing crafts. But over the years as well, I love being creative, and there are other areas in my life, most recently with YouTube being one of them, that is where I love to put my creative energy. And yet, so the thing that has really come up in the last 2 weeks has just suddenly left me super frustrated, because this is the way, this isn't just crafts versus like being a craft person versus not being a craft person. This is like the way that cultural Christianity would have me thinking, where I'm basically, it's like I'm allowed to be a craft person, but I'm not allowed to use my creativity to further God's kingdom, to play my part in his kingdom, to use my creativity where in ways where I'm reading the Bible and I'm seeing things in the world, and I'm asking God, like, help show me, what can I do? What is the part that I get to play? And the thing is, God has given us gifts that we get to use that bring life to ourselves, to our families, to our communities, to the hurting, to the lost, and in a way that glorifies and magnifies His name, which is what we want. But we've been taught to play small. So we've put these boundaries around these things. And it has been the whole craft thing, going from being a craft person to realizing, like, you know what, that was just one way that I express my creativity. And there are actually these other ways that I want to express my creativity, and that I think that God has called me to, and like, there's things that I'm like, this is what I really want to do, has been a huge shift. Okay, I had to quickly pause. I'm not sure where that cut off, but before I go on, I want to invite you to grab the Start Where You're Stuck handout in the description below. And that is a handout that helps you start wherever you're stuck, wherever you're frustrated, wherever something isn't sitting right, wherever something is just like off or bothering you. And it might be that you're ending the day tired every day, and you're tired of it, but you don't know how to change it. Then that's where you're going to start, because that's where you're stuck. And then just go through the steps in the handout to shift and change that, because we have more ability to change things in our lives than we realize. And a lot of this is more of a theological, like the way that we view God, the way we relate to God, what we believe that He says about us in life, the way that we believe that He leads, has everything to do with our actions as Christians, as believers. It has a huge impact on us. And so if we're stuck living a certain way and it's not right, or something is off, or something just doesn't feel right, that needs to be taken seriously and not passed over. Because we've been taught to just let these things go. Don't focus on yourself, just focus on God. All this stuff that sounds great, and yet what is going on inside of our hearts and our minds really has huge impact on our lives. And again, that's all going to lead into the parable that I'm going to share that Jesus shares. But first, let's talk about Deuteronomy. So my dad and I were talking about this on the weekend, or he had shared two passages. So one is Deuteronomy 6:10 through 12, and the other one is Deuteronomy 8, 11 through 16. And in both of those, there's this warning. I'll just read it here. So it says, "And then it will happen that when Yahweh your God will bring you to the land that He swore to your ancestors, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give you large and fine cities that you did not build, and houses full of stores of good things that you did not fill, and hewn cisterns that you did not hew, vineyards and olive groves that you did not plant, and you have eaten your fill, then take care for yourselves so that you do not forget Yahweh, who brought you out from the land of Egypt, from the house of slavery." And it's a similar warning in Deuteronomy 8. So, okay, this is the fundamental problem that we have. It's that church culture, and I'm not talking about the people who say they're Christians and aren't. I'm talking about the people where we care about following God's ways. What we've done, because dealing with the heart is very uncomfortable. It's very hard. It's not black and white. And yet God, Jesus, the God of the Bible, He deals with the heart, like cover to cover. It's what is in your heart, and He sees what's in your heart, and He cares about it. But when we see, the problem that happens is that, like in these verses, God is talking about when all of this stuff happens and you have possessions and things are going well, then deal with your heart. Like, guard yourself. Be careful about making sure that your heart doesn't trust in yourself or go after other gods. You stay with Yahweh, Jesus. And yet what we've done is that, and over the years, it's just classic human nature to set parameters up. So we're like, okay, well, big houses, if big houses is what caused them to stumble, then don't have big houses. If having lots of money is what caused them to stumble, don't have lots of money. If having more than enough is what causes us to stumble, then don't have more than enough. The problem is that we've set up these boundaries around kind of like what Christians are supposed to or are not supposed to do, and then we stay within these walls. And when we're trying to follow God, but we kind of feel this internal resistance or even external resistance, it's usually because we're coming up against some wall that has just been there, like these safeguards that we've put in place to try to keep us safe. And but it's like, so a safeguard of some kind might kind of like just really honing in on if someone's wronged you, just forgive and forget, or don't let the sun go down on your anger. We take something like that, which is in the Bible, and then we make that the safeguard. And if someone is struggling, then it's like, just forgive. Like we're so just like, you just gotta forgive. And so instead of dealing with what is going on the inside and learning how to process that and work with that, then we just push people to deal with it in a black and white kind of way. And it's not actually dealing with the heart. And so what we've done over the years is we've created these boundaries. And but so like where we would just tend to create boundaries and say, I'm going to play small, and I'm not going to make any more money than what my family needs. I'm not going to, which that's fine. And yet, but the problem is, it's like if that's what you feel you should do, totally fine. But if that's what we all feel that we all should do, that's where the problem starts to begin, because that's where there's like this rule or this boundary that we've created where we're all doing the same thing and we all hold each other to it. And this is where if we feel like, maybe there's like this desire for something, or maybe God has called us to use our gifts a certain way, or maybe, maybe he's called you to start a business and where maybe your lifestyle is not going to change very much, but you're going to start a business that generates money, that funds 3 missionaries that are friends that that they're going overseas, and that's it's on your heart to send them out to for God's name and his glory and his fame and his kingdom. And yet along the way, you're like, oh, but I'm not supposed to make money. And so instead of actually confidently doing the work to do the business, to do everything that is on your heart to do, and trusting God to direct and convict you and lead you, then there's these thoughts that come up, or these voices that come up, where we're like, oh, I'm not supposed to do that, so I'm just going to play small. I'm not supposed to earn money. So, you might try really hard, but you're going to keep self-sabotaging because you're not supposed to make money, because Christians aren't supposed to make money, or, whatever it is, right? We've got these things that we're stuck in where, so even as we feel led in a certain direction, or want to go in a certain direction, or want to or don't want to do certain things, we're living certain lives based on what Christians are supposed to do. And again, this is all from a good heart. Like most of the things that we do is because people who love God have put things in place, boundaries in place, in order to protect people. But at the end of the day, it has left a lot of us feeling stuck, living lives that is not, we haven't chosen it. It's like we're playing a game, kind of like the whole creativity thing, where instead of me really, really sitting down and hashing out and working out how I want to use my creativity as a follower of Jesus, I, for years was, ish. I don't know quite how to say that, but basically, like, I would have so easily stayed with, okay, I'm a creative person. I'll just stick with crafts, and I'll I'll trust God that He's got everything in His hands, which He does. But He also calls us to be partners with Him. And so, honestly, I think a lot of our frustration comes from being told as Christians by not like. A lot of these thoughts have been passed down through the years, or just in our family cultures and our church cultures, but where a lot of our frustration comes from being told the ways that we're supposed to live, or what we're supposed to be okay with or not okay with. And if we would just go to God and ask Him and wrestle through these things and start to sit with it long enough until we realize, like, okay, you know what, there's something, if there are things on your heart that you're longing to do, but you're stuck playing the church game, we're playing the Christian game. Again, in no way am I against what Christians do or what churches do, but I'm against the thinking that has us saying or having, again with the verses in Deuteronomy where we are, instead of learning how to guard and protect our heart and keep our hearts and our desires and our mind set on God, we are setting up all these boundaries and these parameters that have just kept people stuck. Because the thing is, whether you have a big house or a small house, like it's kind of dumb to think that, oh, people with big houses and like, what I like having a small home, but it's like to think that someone if they have a big house, that their heart is going to fall away, and having a small house keeps their heart close to God. It's like both people can fall away. You could have someone with a big house that stays close to God and someone with a small house that doesn't. So it's just, but this kind of thinking has crept in major ways that keeps us stuck, keeps us making certain life choices that at the end of the day, it's like, you might have to, maybe God is calling you to start that business. And yet you're playing small, you're staying stuck, you're doing what everybody else is doing because that's what you think you're supposed to do. And it's instead of, I think it's just time for us to actually acknowledge these things. If something is not feeling right, it's because something is not right. And maybe it is something that you need to let go, but let God convict you. Let the Holy Spirit convict you of that versus you assuming that you know what he's actually saying. Because so much of when we think we're following God, it's just us following that like mental committee in our head of a bunch of other people's voices. And we need to start challenging those things that have been passed down to us so that we can actually partner with God in the big and the small things that he has called us to do so we can do it confidently. And that might just mean that you are going to say no to a whole bunch of things in your schedule that you've been saying yes to for years, but you're going to start saying no so that you can be home and be present and create a good family culture, right? It doesn't have to be this huge thing. It's just what is on your heart to do? What is God showing you to do? And start doing it. Start prioritizing those things. And it's a little bit awkward and uncomfortable, but again, that's what the Start Where You're Stuck handout is there for. So grab that in the description below. Okay, so lastly, I just wanted to, at the beginning, I was talking about how we have taught ourselves and taught each other, basically, with this whole kind of thinking says we're teaching each other to bury our talents in the sand. So in Matthew 25:14-30, Jesus tells a story of a parable. I won't go through the whole thing because you can go read it. But basically where the last servant said to his master, I buried your talent and I went and dug it up. When you returned, here it is. You have what is yours because I knew you to be harsh. I knew you to, like, he basically had this list of, I knew that this is what you expected from me. So this is what I did. This is the action that I took. And the master was not pleased with that servant. And this is a really huge problem that we've got to face because we are making huge life choices to live life a certain way, thinking that this is what God wants from us, when we should be going to him and going to the Bible and actually saying, what is on your heart? What, like, how are we supposed to live? How have you called us to live? And stop thinking that we're all supposed to be looking the same. We're all supposed to be doing the same thing. And again, honestly, I think a lot of our frustration as Christians comes from this pressure to all do things a certain way, or where it's all just like, make sure you're going to church and Bible study, which is great, but that's not the end necessarily. Like that's not the goal. It's like, okay, how are we supposed to live in the rest of life? What does a flourishing Christian life look like? And it's like, just start challenging it, start looking at life and making choices. And a big indicator, okay, so like homework wise, right? If you want to take this seriously, just pick something in your life that you're sick of and that you are tired of and you want to change and change it, which of course, a plug again for grab the Start Where You're Stuck handout in the description below. But basically start to change something. And if it's uncomfortable, if it's hard, like start to either remove the things that you don't want and increase the things that you do want, and say no to that invite that you really don't want to show up for. And like, don't just make excuses for why you can't come. Just say, no, I don't want to come. And that is where, when you start to create those small changes, that's where those mental voices are going to start coming up. And those are the thoughts that wisely should capture and become very aware of, and bring those in obedience to Christ, and like take those things seriously, because those are the thoughts that are going to keep you stuck. Because when we create a change, if our choices take us outside of the rules or the boundaries that our Christian culture has created for us, then that simple shift is going to bring up a whole lot of just internal friction, where we're going to feel like, I'm doing the wrong thing. This isn't what God wants. And that's where you got to go to him and say, is this actually something that you've told me not to do? Or because again, that way of thinking, I would never have been here in front of a camera talking to you if I stuck with that kind of thinking. I would have stayed doing the crafts, doing the whatever came my way, doing like just playing small, versus taking this seriously and taking the longing in my heart to take God seriously, and where I'm like, I don't want to go 50 years doing whatever. I want to actually be part of his story. And that doesn't, again, I'm not saying that means doing the big thing or ignoring people or not caring about things. It's just like, what has God called you to? Start doing it. And like take that seriously. And what are the things that are heavy on your heart or the things that are just not sitting right? Take those things seriously and deal with them, even if they take a lot of time, and let God show you who he is. Because at the end of the day, Jesus is our goal. He is our prized possession, and he's the one that we want. And it takes work, but it is so worth it to learn how to stop assuming that we know what he's looking for and what he's called us to, and to start to dismantle this web of thinking, this way, like just the thoughts that we have, the group think ways of doing life that we have, that it's not all bad, and yet it keeps us very stuck. And the sad thing is that it keeps us stuck from following our shepherd. And that's the problem. And that's the thing that I'm trying to, hopefully was able to put my finger on. And just, again, to give you courage, my desire for you is that you would have courage to take God at his word. So go read the Bible, get lost in the story of God, and play your part. And I will talk to you soon.